Hey guys, welcome back to the Gilded Age. We're only 2 episodes in, and the social stakes are already as sharp as Agnes van Rhijn's tongue. This is Bluntberry Reviews. Smart, sharp, and just a little savage. We break down movies, shows, and everything in between, telling you what's worth the hype, and certainly what's not. Season 1, Episode 2, Money Isn't Everything. This one opens up again on the sweeping, picturesque street. Still grand, still impressive, and yet I can't shake the feeling I'm staring at a Hollywood backlot dressed in 1880s finery. The show dives right in, reminding us that mixing old money and new money is considered a social crime in this era. Marian is being fitted for her new clothes, and Agnes insists is needed. This is more of Agnes than it is Marian, trying to up her visual status, if you will. Peggy is by her side, a budding friendship born from shared experiences, the kind of quiet bond that feels inevitable. I mean, we saw this in episode 1, and we know that this friendship is probably going to last all the way through the next season. Into this comes Tom Rikes. Now, I know in my last review, I mentioned Tom as being the potential love interest for Oscar. That is not the case. It's actually John Adams. But Tom Rikes, in this particular context, is the lawyer who settled Marian's father's estate. He arrived in town, surprisingly. But we kind of all know, based on their interaction, he's followed Marian to town, claiming he's always wanted to be in New York. But he's not being as coy as he thinks he is. But this certainly illustrates that Agnes, as always, remains unimpressed with what could be a choice of suitor, and also any involvement in the charity role she decides to adopt, like with the upcoming bazaar, which Agnes treats less like goodwill and more like calculated performance for society's approval. Miss Astor's name continues to drift through conversations as a gold standard for acceptance. We've only seen her briefly in episode 1, but she doesn't come out for just anyone or anything. This is apparent. I point this out because her slow reveal is palpable. I so want to know what her backstory is and why everyone seems to think that she's the bee's knees. Meanwhile, the household staff, both in the Van Rhijn and the Russell home, work quietly behind the scenes to steer their employers towards the outcome they want, but also recognizing that some of them have their own ambitions, their own designs, and certainly their own vices. This is evident when Mrs. Bauer gets cornered again in the street by a man demanding repayment. Peggy steps in to help, but later we learn that Bauer owes $50, which at the time is a lot of money, and has been stealing to cover it. Early on, the talk turns to the bazaar. This seems like a grand moment, a social event, a yearly cattle call. Anne Morris and Aurora Fane lead the charge to solicit Bertha Russell's donation while very intentionally keeping her off the guest list to the planning committee. It's a social snub with an economic twist, but it's out there. It's not hidden. It's almost like people have to say it out loud to confirm they are towing the party line. But this doesn't stop what comes next. Dinner at the Russell mansion shows off the glittery foyer, staircases, shining floors, floral arrangements, and eventually introduces the very large ballroom. Still unused, but offered up as a potential bazaar venue if the armory falls through. During dinner with Anne and her husband, Anne makes it a point to point out how opulent the choices made to build a home are from her perspective. It doesn't help that Bertha points out that they've hired architect Stanford White, setting themselves apart from the more acceptable choices of the old guard. This scene is just dripping with jealousy. This isn't just hospitality, it's social strategy. While Bertha maneuvers for visibility at dinner, George Russell works on a much bigger game, securing support for a new train station. In meeting with associates of the city's alderman, he dangles the promise of massive profits without saying anything that would later prove to be incriminating, much like insider trading. Later, Mr. Morris confirmed he was able to convince his circle to quietly invest and push the legislation to make it happen. A successful chess move by Mr. Russell, supported by the dinner organized by Bertha. They are a true team, holding up different pillars, pulling different levers, working together. Back at the Van Rhijn home, Agnes confides to Ada that Marian's future marriage, unbeknownst to Marian, must be about stability, not romance. which is why she's dismissive of both Larry, Russell, and Tom. Agnes needs to control everything. Every molecule in her orbit and seemingly in the city has a design that she can only see and wants to manage to death. Like a mirror, Marian and Peggy later run into Gladys Russell at the fountains, where she laments her strict social restrictions, which mirrors similar motherly efforts from Bertha, as Agnes is showing to maximize marriage potentials for these two ladies. Marian still finds it odd. Gladys just finds it frustrating. The drama ticks up when the armory location for the bazaar is double booked and falls through. But Anne Morris still hesitates to accept Bertha's ballroom offer, fearing social repercussions. Instead, she books a hotel ballroom, triggering a change in venue announcement in the papers. Of course, Bertha reads about the bazaar changes in the papers and is livid. I would be too. So far, Bertha has done nothing but be nice to these people, and she is an outcast just because she's new money. At the bazaar, Miss Astor makes an appearance and opens the proceedings with a quick speech. This is the first time we see her out in the wild, and everyone is proud to have her in attendance. Also in attendance is Miss Chamberlain, resplendent in black, and shunned for some reason not yet revealed, but apparently not deterred enough to not attend. She discreetly speaks with Marian, buying some of the items at her table, and carefully invites Marian to call on her, until Agnes swiftly shuts it down with a look from across the room. Marian gets one hell of a reprimand, but she's still unsure of the whys. On the other side of the room, Oscar makes a pass at Gladys under her mother's watchful eye. I think this is an attempt by Oscar to find his beard, which will allow for him to continue his courtship with John Adams, but Bertha holds her ground and keeps Gladys close. In a grand turn of events, George Russell walks in, ends the game with a flourish. He buys out the entire bazaar. Every item, every booth, gone. It's not charity, it's dominance and a badass power move. Reminds me of the movie Crazy Rich Asians, where they bought out the hotel they were being summarily dismissed from during a monsoon. Just like that. Once back home, Miss Astor makes it clear to her daughter that she is not yet ready to welcome Russell into the fold. It seems that this is the trigger point for acceptance, the gateway Bertha seeks for inclusion. But it is clear now that George's move ensures that everyone knows that the Russells are here and they are to be taken seriously. This episode for me cements the Gilded Age as a story about calculated move, social, economic, and the interpersonal. This episode's title, Money Isn't Everything, proves that in this world, the right gesture at the right time can shift the balance of power. And George Russell's roaring buyout just might be the moment that changes everything.